I finally got it.
Everything started to flow.
I felt it in my gut.
It was as though a light went on.
It was a total aha moment.
How do we know what we know? Scientists uncover facts. Nature imparts wisdom. Storytellers weave our shared narrative, while contemplatives seek inner knowing. All that we know is imbued with imagination, and our understanding is ever emerging. Welcome to Knowing, a podcast that explores the synthesis of knowledge, illuminating creativity and insight.
Play is the spontaneous exploration of sensation. I learned how to trust the edge of my imagination. The quietness of presence to hear the voice, and I had the trust to follow it. It has upgraded my definition of love. How to be a happy chappy. They've gotten the inner child to come forward stage front. I can bend and sway and dance with the current of life.
Hi, it's Wendy.
And it's Rob. This episode of Knowing is about joy.
Before we go anywhere, I am so excited to tell everyone listening that this episode of our show contains a very special invitation to each listener. Later in the show, you'll receive it. It's an invitation to a wedding. No kidding. We hope to see you there, so hang on till end of show for that.
Today's show explores joy through three distinct lenses: the Pied Pipers of joy, the teacher of laughter, and the guide who stands by our side and shines a light. As Al-Ghazali once said, as we shoot an arrow into the dark at a target we do not yet see.
Juicy. Well, our guests today unveil joy in a number of beautiful ways too, and helpful ways. We explore joy through our body, our biochemistry, and the mechanics of laughter.
And through our actions, what we do to experience joy and what happens when we do, our embodiment and our movement in this world which unfolds our lives.
And we explore joy through the obstructions that blunt our joy and the ways we can free ourselves from them. That's our monkey mind.
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with that. And also the joy through the felt sense of it, through our emotion, through our expression.
I'm so excited. There are many fun words that have popped up through these conversations that everyone's about to hear as we produce the show. And they were just so beautiful, Rob. They were like, bliss kept coming up, and peace, and radiance.
Radiance,
yeah, just to name a few. I acquired a favorite word, which I just have to share.
Oh, do share.
Yeah, it's a new word to me, and I think it's really related to joy. It's sonder. Yeah. So sonder is a noun that describes the feeling of realizing. So not the realization, the feeling of realizing that everyone you see has a life as full and complex as your own. It also refers to that person as a central character in overlapping stories.
Wendy, do you know where I find joy?
I think I might say it.
Puppies.
I knew you were going to say that.
There's nothing better than a puppy. It's squirming and licking, nibbling on your ear, and that puppy breath.
I love the breath.
I just melt.
If I go for a quick grab, like, where do I find joy? I have to think of Ted Lasso because, oh my gosh. And I just heard like a week ago that there's a new season coming out.
I'm excited for that.
Oh my God, a joy bomb. So, fun fact, Rob.
Okay.
Want to hear about the longest laugh?
I do.
In February of 2022, yoga master Rajendra Kumar from Rajasthan, India, created the Harvard World Record for laughing, 3 hours, 47 minutes, and 54 seconds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a laugh. My friend and I from adolescence, his name was Alex, we used to get each other laughing, and it would go for the longest time. And I recall one time my grandma Betty thought we were on something. We weren't. We just had a way of getting it sparked, you know.
That's a good friend.
Yeah.
Well, laughter is a really big part of today's show, which even includes a DIY. And we mean it when we say this show features overwhelmingly joyful guests. Rob, why don't you get us started on introducing who's on today's show?
One of our guests today, he was born Larry Edward Gordon, and now goes by Laraji, is an interesting mix of a musician, a mystic, and a laughter guide and instructor. It's contagious, isn't it?
It's contagious.
He attended Brown University during the civil rights movement in the 60s. Folks, this is 81 years of wisdom and spiritual diligence. And you should see this guy's tour schedule at 81. He's still out there killing it. It's remarkable. It has been said that he was a street performer and a busker that was discovered by Brian Eno, and he did play on Brian Eno records, but his Segue to Infinity album released in 2023 put that whole thing to rest, being called the best release by Pitchfork, and it cemented him as one of the most prominent ambient and new age artists of all time.
Of all time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the story when I first met Laraji in the mid-90s. It was really memorable. I was a publicist, so I just met a lot of people, but I got him a TV spot. And I went with him to the TV studio, and we were really nervous. So to calm our nerves, Laraji and I sat for like a half an hour in my car and in the parking lot laughing. It was awesome. Really special.
Another guest we have on today's show is a musical performance group called Future Joy, which you might have noticed we titled the show after. Wendy, do you remember when we followed the recommendation of our friends and went to the brewery?
I will never forget this.
I was watching them thinking, what am I watching?
I couldn't stop dancing, but then I also noticed that everyone in the room was looking at each other like, is this really happening? Are we really experiencing something special and unusual here?
Yeah.
And we all knew it.
Yeah, it was a musical performance, but it's so much more than that. These people are bringing up the mood and the vibration of the entire room. Everyone in the room was smiling and dancing, and it was wild.
Yeah, it's really indescribable. But perhaps our guests will get to have this experience for themselves one day.
Yes.
So our third segment, and I'm going to say right now, it's the tail end of the show. So I'm going to say, wait for it, guys. Features psychotherapist, author, social justice advocate, Urena Jackson. In my interview with her, we talk about how joy may be accessed by each and every one of us, and we discuss how the human brain responds to the molecule MDMA. Urena has worked in community-based mental health for 25 years in Oakland. She was an instructor of restorative justice at UC Berkeley School of Law, is the published author of the book Girls Rising, and the creator of Ancestor's Keeper, which is a curriculum for adolescent youth surrounding racial trauma and healing. She's also an initiate in an African tradition that dates back approximately 8,000 years. Urena created a psychospiritual therapeutic modality called Safe House 7. So Urena and I talk about a recipe for joy through this therapeutic lens. And I think we're going to all relate to this material. And we discuss the modern hack for joy, this molecule known as MDMA. This is absolutely life-changing to hear. So I really hope you guys hang on through the end of this third segment.
Yeah, don't miss it, guys. It's worth it. And the end of the show also includes that wedding invitation Wendy mentioned, a reward for listening to the entire show.
I hope we see them there.
So, let's get this joy train rolling, shall we?
Yes.
All right.
If I left this dimension, what would I like to leave behind? That would be the inspiration for an individual to target, identify their inner voice, trust it, and follow it. I began hearing my inner voice more clearly after practicing meditation, learning how to sit quietly and be nowhere, doing nothing, and finding how to be comfortable with stillness, silence, and doing nothing, essentially being without mental content, just no titles, no names. It showed me a new direction in music, but it also allowed me to hear inner guidance so clear that I couldn't ignore it. It communicated in a way that I knew what it was talking about. And I was impressed with how clear the voice was, how focused it was, like I was in Matrix and somebody was talking on the phone. And I wanted to see where this would go. This was one of the high points of hearing the inner voice. The instant I decide to acknowledge and follow that voice, I feel I'm on cosmic time. I've stepped out of mundane linear time and I am in cahoots with a vast intelligence. And that is a great cellular experience. One thing led to another, and before I know it, I am playing music on the sidewalks of New York with this new instrument that I'm playing because I had the quietness of presence to hear the voice, and I had the trust to follow it. I practiced that trust after then. Going to play music in New York, I would go to a street corner and I stand there and just wait. Where should I set up? And just follow what I thought I heard and experiment with what I think I hear. So much so that I learned how to trust the edge of my imagination and learn how to listen to that edge. Go to the edge of a park. Just ask yourself, where should I go? What should I do? And then follow what I think I heard. Like go to the pond and sit there for a few minutes. Or stand by the flower garden and watch the bees. And learn what happens when I choose that way of resourcing my guidance. And over time, I learned that it leads to peace, harmony, love, light, and laughter. People ask me, how are you so peaceful and quiet? And I say it's a minimum of agitation in my life. And because I feel I'm working with a cosmic radar system, it has upgraded my definition of love. Love actually is oneness. It is a universal oneness. And to the degree that I can embrace it, integrate it, and radiate it, even if there's no one in my presence, there's still a loving radiation.
Zach and Emily from Future Joy, welcome to the Knowing Podcast.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
This is a unique interview because this is the first time on the Knowing Podcast we've had 4 people in one interview. We have Wendy here. Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
And then we have Zach and Emily and then myself. So this is going to be fun and new and interesting.
Future Joy. That's the name of your project. Tell us what's behind this name. Why future? Why joy?
We say that it's not the distant future, it's right after the moment. So
because the future is now.
Yeah, as soon as you say future joy, you're experiencing that joy. Originally, it was the name of a song. It was a different name for the project called Like a Kenny G6. And then my lawyer said that Kenny G was threatening a lawsuit and I needed to change. So that Future Joy was the name of a song that had been released. And then when in the rebrand, it was like that was right off the bat was top of the list.
I just think the fact that you were almost sued by Kenny G is one for the resume.
Totally.
That's excellent. You guys entertain, you create music, you bring atmosphere to an environment. Is the music the thing or is the music the vehicle for the thing?
I think the music is the vehicle.
What's it a vehicle for?
Zach said it wasn't really that much of an intentional name. We kind of just fell into it. And then all of a sudden, here we are 4 years later, planting our little seeds of joy all over the country. And traction is gaining. And it's our full-time gig now, which is really exciting.
It sounds a little like you stepped into like the outfit and then became it, you know?
Totally. Fake it till you make it, right?
That keeps coming up this week. So I want to talk a little bit about your home on the road, which I got to see. You made a choice to have a live-in vehicle that includes a unique pop-up stage. So you travel to places ready to offer up shows that can just take place spontaneously.
We're actually in it now. I don't know if you can see. This pops down here, and they called it a patio, but Emily found it kind of during the COVID lockdown. We were living in Denver, and we both were full-time DJs. And when all the clubs closed, it was like, well, you know, where can we play music? So she found this because it had the patio, and we said, you know, that's not a patio. That's obviously a stage. And we just hit the road.
It was kind of our solution to lockdown. It was socially distanced concerts. So we could play a concert anywhere. Just pull up the RV, pull out the stage and play. You wouldn't have to contact the clients. Like, we played for a senior center in their parking lot. It was kind of how we got our start and how we got recognized. And now when we play on it, it's only 8x8. So it's real tiny. It's real cozy up there.
Yeah, and it's like we've realized how much we bounce around, and like now it's like we feel like the whole place shaking, and it's almost difficult to play off of it now. But I think we did our first set in Denver and then just hit the road and kind of started doing that everywhere. Probably the most spontaneous was we saw the sign for Spirit of the Sewanee Music Park. And so we pulled up, and it just happened to be the first weekend back from COVID. They were throwing a festival. It was like their Mardi Gras Jam Fest. And I asked them if we could play music, and they're like, yeah, you can play in the campground. Just, you know, be quiet by whatever, 11 or midnight. And we just set up and kind of walked around and introduced ourselves to some people that were at the festival and told them we were going to play music. And we ended up creating a crowd of people that ended up skipping the headliner. I think it was Oteil Burbage and Dumpster Funk, and they just skipped the show and partied with us.
Time stands still while we move as one. There are no rules, we've only just begun. You send shivers down my...
They call it renegading at that park, which it's allowed, it's encouraged. It's a music park. And so we must have renegaded 7 or 8 times, and each time the party would get a little bit bigger. And then eventually they hired us to be on the actual festival.
There is no mountain we can't climb. Everything is better with you by my side.
You guys exemplify build it and they will come. You know?
Totally.
Can we talk about clothes? Because I was on your website, and for our listeners, that's futurejoymusic.com.
Yeah.
And there's like a montage of you in these fabulous outfits.
Zach would wear rompers or romp hymns. That was his thing. And for the first year, it was really just you wearing funny rompers, and I would just wear whatever. Then we started finding matching women's to his romp hymns. And then it kind of tumbled into this thing that it is now, which I think, I don't know, we have 20 outfits or so.
Yeah.
It definitely like ups the optics of joy, for sure.
It does. So are there times when you're just not feeling it? And have you learned how to like shift your energy around that so that you can show up and deliver joy?
Totally. I think it's for me more than Zach. Zach is just present joy all the time. But sometimes if it's been a long drive or less sleep or it's a certain time of the month, I'm feeling a little cranky. But Zach is such a good MC that even if the crowd is a little bit like lackluster or not giving us as much energy as we're putting out, he'll get on the mic and say funny things and loosen people up and get them dancing and get me laughing. But it definitely is a process.
But yeah, as far as like what you said of like whether it's the vehicle or the thing, like I feel like once we're doing the thing, like that's all I have ever wanted to do. So it's like the fact that I get to just play music, there's no like bad days for me on that, you know? Like if we're playing a show that like I can't have a frown at that point.
Nice.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, no kidding. Can I borrow some of that?
Right. Can you put that in the sticker pack?
Yes, yes.
So music unites people. Having done a little bit of touring myself in this age of division, I feel like music is one of those platforms where you can get a group together of diverse backgrounds, maybe political ideologies, whatever, and they can all get in a space and agree on this one thing. We like this. What's been your experience in bringing unity through your performances?
The unity and community.
Nice. Bumper sticker.
Yeah.
It's like the Pied Piper that is the saxophone. The saxophone and the female voice unite people regardless.
Your jokes. He's got jokes. It's a beautiful thing when you get a group of people together that are all singing and dancing and letting loose and being free together. It's like really raises the vibration of the whole planet, in my opinion. Actually, it brings me to a funny interview I saw with Shaquille O'Neal, who's now a world famous DJ. And someone asked him why music festivals, why EDM? And he said he went to a music festival and saw 9,000 or 10,000 people living in peace and harmony and zero police presence and just good vibes, the highest of vibes, and said, I got to be a part of this. When he got on the stage and started performing, he says the only place where he could get Game 7 energy is on the DJ stand playing for thousands of people.
I'm curious about the dance part because not every performer has dance so embedded in what they're doing. I wonder how you experience that raising of the level specifically from people dancing together.
Because we play dance music, it's like we expect it at a point.
But we have to realize that not everyone is a dancer.
People don't necessarily go to the show expecting to dance. It's definitely tangible, and it feels like, when we're putting out energy and they're dancing and it's coming back to us.
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop.
Yeah, and then that energizes us, which in turn energizes them. And those are the parties that really start to get ecstatic, is the dance party aspect is kind of their performance that's energizing our performance.
That's a nice loop. I think about things like, there's this theory that if everyone on the planet meditated at the same time and had the same EEG or whatever, they would actually like vacuum, force the rest of us into that feeling, right? And I feel that like on dance floors, like I'm smelling people's sweat and our heartbeats are in the same rhythm as the music. And there's some like weird, we're becoming a third person thing,
Yeah, synergy.
Yeah, it's a good word for it.
And I've noticed, Zach, that you kind of break that third wall, is that what they call it, and enter the audience. Is that another way that you use to create that reciprocal energy?
I think we both kind of use it in two ways. If we want more from the crowd, so we're not feeling like we're getting enough, so I'll jump out there and like, give it to me, or as a reward for that. And it's like, oh, they're really giving it to me. Like now I'm jumping out because I want to be a part of it.
Turning it up, got to give up. Melody's free, move your feet.
We try and incorporate in every set if we can. And I'm always looking around, seeing what I can jump or climb on. Is there a bar I can dance on? Is there someone I always like to go sing right at the people that are talking, just sing in their face until they realize.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I also have been looking at like, what's the biggest jump I can make? Because that really like gets people. If I can like hop over something into the crowd, it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
While playing the sax.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw our video
Parkour.
we posted today. I'm playing the sax while running on the treadmill.
Is that like practice?
Well, it was mostly just promotional silliness, but we have seen, I mean, there's videos of like Beyonce and all these famous singers running on the treadmill singing. And we basically got our start on this little 8x8 stage on the back of our RV. And now that we've been playing bigger and bigger stages and festivals, we find ourselves running around the stage and then, even jumping out in the crowd and
look at all this room we have.
And we're running around everywhere. And so when we first started doing that, we would look at each other and we're like, I'm so winded, like, oh my God. And so now it's like just upping our rehearsal. And like, if we have practice, we're just like jumping and adding cardio to the rehearsal because it's one of those things you don't think about as much.
I see a fitness video in your future.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Seriously. You'll be writing books that are like, how to stay fit and build endurance through joy.
Let's do it. And 1, and 2, and 3.
Time is now. The place is here. Shift your focus. Joy not here.
So how do you describe joy?
It's kind of like ultimate bliss, ultimate freedom, ultimate love. Your soul's total expression.
Love that.
And I don't think it's something that you can strive to be or you can attain. Like, it is within. You just have to uncover it.
As a follow-up to that, has your relationship to emanating joy for others brought joy to your life off stage?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it feels like it's almost become bigger than itself. I feel like for me, it has become easier to emanate joy because joy is expected. Like, people just kind of walk in and they're like, yeah, it's future joy. Like, we're supposed to be happy right now. And it's not like we have to overcome some sadness. People are just like already lifting their own spirits, and kind of that same thing of like this feedback loop. So like, it makes it easier to put out that positive feeling, and it just feeds everyone.
Someone wrote a comment and was joking, saying, looks like you guys are just on a permanent honeymoon. And we kind of are. And for me, getting sober was a big part of this too. I think that substance, especially in this festival scene and musician scene where partying is almost encouraged and seen as normal and seen as medicine, which I do believe it all is, but there's a balance to things. And I think for me, I struggled a lot with that and with my attitude and just my mood. And being sober for the last 2 years, you for the last 3, there's not so much riding the roller coaster, it's just maintaining this joy. It's just there. You don't have to uncover it as much. You don't have to dive deep. It's just a happy little plateau of joy.
At first, we struggled in that we were like maybe missing the high highs. And we just kind of realized, like, once there wasn't a high and a low, the center just started rising.
Well, that's lovely.
And just at the main, just day to day, there's not as much up and down, but just the balance of living right in the center is just a more joyful experience.
There's only one thing you can control, right? And it's your reaction to things. Like, you can't control any of this going on outside. But if you don't let the things bother you, it's really cool to watch your reactions change and kind of analyze in your brain, oh, this person cutting me off used to make me really mad, but now it doesn't faze me at all. It just is part of life. Okay, there's nothing I can do about this. Well, I can decide how I'm going to react, and I don't want to be sad or mad or upset. I just choose joy. It's pretty easy.
Flow with water, be like rain. Let it go, release your pain.
We were driving like 2 days ago through Ohio, and I kept trying to change lanes and no one was letting me in. So finally I'd like force my way over, and people would get around me and they're like honking and like throwing their hands up. And I was like, man, Ohio is just really like having a tough day. And it turned out that our turn signal wasn't working. So they didn't know I was trying to get over. And then it looked like I was like just cutting people off.
So apologies to Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, that wording, our flair, I don't know if you can elaborate on, like, what is that? What is your flair?
We call it future funk with a capital F-U-N. So it's fun. And I think the fun and the love is portrayed in the music, that you can feel it. We've had people tell us just by listening to a song that we can feel how much fun you're having doing this, which we are.
Do you have advice for someone who is home alone, got a little too used to it, pandemic maybe went on a little too long, and doesn't know how to turn that battery, the other direction and re-enter, and it seems overwhelming and, oh my gosh, all these people? What would you say to them to help them join in?
Come to a show.
That's a good question. I think you're right. I think that COVID almost normalized isolation, which I don't think is good. But also there is a difference between being lonely and being alone. And I think that I know it's hard to put yourself out there, but you just have to do it. There's so many events too. Like for me, when I moved to Denver, I started going to open mic nights. It's like find your passion and then follow that. There's always an activity. They have the dating apps, but now most of those also have best friend options where you can swipe and meet people online. And there's meetup groups, there's hiking groups. I think just find a hobby or something that you're interested in and follow your passion, and doors will open.
Dance too, like if you're shy and maybe not verbally feeling like confident, you could just jump up and down. You don't even have to be a good dancer. You can literally just jump up and down, shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people and feel like connected.
Jumping jacks. Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything we didn't ask you about that you want to talk about? Is there anything in particular in the field of joy or just anything?
I think just don't overthink it. Kind of like we were talking about seeking something. It's more of an unveiling or revealing what's already inside. Just don't get in your head so much. Just do it.
and what you think can change. I've been laughing so much lately about who I used to think I was going to be and who I've become. I was like a Denver, Colorado boy. I used to think I'm going to live in Denver my whole life. I'm going to smoke weed and drink alcohol and go get a steak, like surf and turf's my favorite dinner. And here I am. We've been living on the road full time for 4 years. We have a house in Florida for the winter. I've been sober for 3 years and we're vegetarian leaning vegan. And it's just like, so who I thought I was and will be has completely changed. So kind of to that sense of like, don't overthink it. Like, don't put yourself in a box. And if you do put yourself in a box, that box can change.
Thanks for that.
We often think of happiness or joy as being the circumstances of our life. Like it's all like what's happening around us. But it sounds to me like you guys are initiating joy from within, regardless of circumstances. It's very Buddhist in nature.
In a way, they have to. It's like, showtime.
Right.
Like I have no choice. I have to bring joy to these people.
Totally. Which in turn brings me joy.
So you said you struggled more than Zach, Emily, and sometimes it's like, I'm not feeling it. What do you do to spark it?
Even yesterday, we were going to go to the gym, and I knew that just getting on the treadmill for 20 minutes was going to make me feel so much better. But that instance right before where you feel so much resistance and like, no, I don't want to do that. It's almost like your brain tricking you into making you feel worse. Like, I know this simple activity can make me feel better, but I'm having so much resistance to it. And Zach, I looked for a way out. I'm like, we don't need to work out. He's like, well, let's just work out. And we did. I felt amazing afterwards. And same thing with music. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing it. And I don't know what that is, this inner crazy voice that I got in there, that we all have in there, that tries to tell you to do silly things. Because as soon as I start creating or singing or DJing, I just snap right back into it and I feel a 180. And so sometimes you just have to force yourself to do things that you know are good for you.
Face it till you make it rather than fake it. You know?
Face it. Do tell. Explain that a little.
Fake it till you make it has this undertone of like, you don't know what you're doing or that it's fake. I'm faking it. But it's like facing it is kind of, you know, like, oh, I don't necessarily want to do this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to face it. I know that I'm not feeling it now, but it probably is good for me or it's good for them or whatever it is. And so you face it. And in doing that, you all make it.
I think that's your next album title.
Maybe that could be for the aerobic video.
Yeah, face it till you make it. Yeah,
it's good.
Okay, what's next for you guys? What's on the horizon?
Well, we just pulled into a amusement park in Connecticut, so I'm going to go ride a roller coaster.
Zach and Emily, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being on the Knowing Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Time stands still while we move as one. There are no rules, we've only just begun. You send shivers down my spine, goosebumps and butterflies. Life becomes a dream, and dreams become real life. There is no mountain.
If you build a language for joy, joy will come. In the beginning of this laughter workshop, that's the way we did it. We just laughed and fake it till you make it, until I got the doctor's report that the health benefits of laughter can be enjoyed more if we focus inwardly with our laughter to stimulate these areas of our body intentionally, so that you can become a stimulus in the theater. Sitting in the audience, you can laugh, be the first one to laugh and open up the laughter envelope. It is work, I have to admit that. Sometimes you'll say, I don't feel like laughing. Or the killer is, there's nothing to laugh at. Or why would I laugh at a time like this? That is the small attitude. The big attitude is that there's a whole perfect universe unfolding right here and right now. And that local situations, I don't think they qualify to take us totally away from the joy and the bliss of knowing that we have been given opportunity to inhabit consciousness within this eternal thing called life. And so joy can be to the degree of our focus, where we are focused. And if we're focused in just being human and we like it there and we want to enjoy anger, fear, and pain and discomfort, and we think that's our duty, and we feel good about doing it as our duty, then you should do your duty. But those who are in pain and suffering, I'm not saying that you should be laughed at, but they should be reminded that there's a laughter side of life, there's a lighter side. I tend to go with being as empty as I can with the mental field and letting the universal oneness be my major message or focus. And it can decide what the listener needs to take from that experience. It also empowers me to not become dependent upon making incorrect choices and decisions and obligating myself to non-essential directions in life. I think that's what takes the joy out of life, to wake up and realize that I'm stuck in responsibilities and obligations that I would not choose if I really wanted to be happy all the time. And I can live this feeling, dance this feeling, walk and talk and perform inside this feeling. It gives me a lightness. It gives me an opportunity to not get bent out of shape with what's going on in the external. Adults can laugh 11 times a day. Children can laugh 111 times a day. They have freer access to the bubbly gigglies. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes to really get into an authentic laughter release. And after 15 minutes, you'll agree that that was work. But the rest of the day, our laughter is closer to the surface. we become an advanced connoisseur of laughter in public places. I really enjoy listening to laughter. And I also am mindful how my body language is present when other people are laughing so that I don't inadvertently squash somebody else's laughter opportunity. I try to get everyone to be in their water body throughout the whole play shop. So if you can laugh while being in your water body, you've loosened up, you've opened up, you've become flexible, fluid, and buoyant. Play is a spontaneous exploration of sensation. People are up, moving around, playing with their feet, then the knees, the legs, the thighs, the hips, the walk, and we just go until we get into the water body, the space body, the energy body, and eye contact. And so within 10 to 15 minutes, all the participants have forgotten the adult boundaries, and they are playing and giggling and freed up, and they're ready to play with their laughter. They've gotten the inner child to come forward, stage front, sending the physical sound and the psychologically positive sound of our voice, for instance, into the brain to stimulate the pituitary and the pineal gland, to vibrate the body, flesh, bones, and blood with this positive psychological activity, and then into the thyroid, into the throat, the thymus just beneath the breastbone, in the chest, the heart, the abdominal organs, the lungs, the bones, the fascia, the skin. They receive this internal, intentional, positive psychological tone of our voice. Our voice takes on this tone. It's a different tone than the tone of, I'm going to shoot you and make you dead. This is a different, the positive psychological of laughter is, I want to lift you up. I want to be unconditionally present with you without judgment. And I'm radiating you with the freedom to be present now.
Here's Wendy's interview with Urena Jackson.
Welcome to Knowing Urena.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wendy.
In your career, where does joy fit into the equation of mental health?
Look, this is like the only game in town, our life, and it's kind of why we're here. And I think we want to optimize that experience. So joy really brings in, even if it's momentary, the fullness of our experience here. Much of therapy is centered around what gets in the way of experiencing joy. And I'm actually thinking right now of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's the first four categorization of the needs in the pyramid, and he actually calls them deficiency needs. So it's the physiological needs of air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and then safety, physical, emotional, job security, health. And then there's love and belonging, which that sense of connection with family, friends, or a sense of community. And then esteem needs, a sense of value and purpose and self-respect. So when these deficiency needs aren't met, then a person kind of experiences varying degrees of anxiety and stress, which obviously have a cascading effect on their life. So in therapy, we're really trying to address fulfilling these deficiency needs so that a person can move on, to the last two categories that Maslow's hierarchy outlines, which is self-actualization and transcendence, which corresponds more closely to the idea of joy.
Joy is differentiated from other expressions, right? We talk about happiness, we talk about contentment, and I'm interested in knowing how joy differs from these.
Happiness is an experience that is a little bit more outward facing. It's this fulfillment of outer measures. So I have a beautiful home, a good marriage, healthy children, good job. I'm happy. It's how good our lives feel to ourselves. Contentment is that felt sense, that sensation of happiness, the general fulfillment and that sense of peace. Mm-hmm. But joy, it's an inner exuberance. It's a total presence, a full expression of who we are. Audre Lorde, she's a Black feminist writer. She talks about the erotic aliveness of the moment. That feels like a really good definition of joy. And I think that joy is really closely related to freedom and connection, the freedom of expression. It's like this radiant authenticity flow of the moment or of a person. Connection relates to joy because it's the through line of how we experience joy. It's really about this sense of intimacy. And I've heard somebody break down intimacy as into me see. This just really deep communing with a person, a place, a moment.
Is there a way you kind of know it? Like, oh, there it is. Is there a tell?
That's why I use the term radiate, that there's a fullness. It's an energetic fullness that comes through. For me, that's my kind of telltale sign that something is present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a kind of modern hack. As opposed to the therapeutic straight path, working with a therapist or whatever practices we may acquire, we today have the drug methylene dioxymethamphetamine, MDMA, which is an empathogen. What is an empathogen? And then also, how does it differ from other molecular mechanisms that affect our mood?
An empathogen, as I understand it, is something that increases a person's feeling of benevolence towards others and self. I think it's important in talking about how it actually works because there's a lot of different neurobiological mechanisms at work. When MDMA is really set in the body, there's first a reduction in the amygdala in the brain. And the amygdala is really responsible for the survival fear kind of response. So it's kind of a reduction of that anxiety. And then there's also this increased function in the prefrontal cortex, which is really the ability to have more complex thought and processing. So we're getting more clear, kind of elevated thinking. And then there's an increased activity in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is responsible for, among other things, memory. So it allows, events that are specifically in trauma. What happens is that the event is ever present and it hasn't processed into a long-term memory. So when the hippocampus is activated, it really allows that processing for the memory to be casted back into a long-term memory. And then there's a whole release of hormones. So it activates serotonin production, which is responsible for positive mood. You get this mild activity in the 2A receptors. And that receptor in particular are activated by more classical psychedelics. So we have this more expansive outside of the box thinking, but it's a mild dose. So there's still presence. And then you have a stimulation of dopamine, which is like desire to engage. And at the same time, there's the alpha, I think 1 and 2 receptors that simultaneously relax you. And then finally, you have oxytocin. So you have this attachment and bonding chemical and really just relationship super glue. So you can see it's really doing so many different things. It's opening and activating and allowing things to process in very clear flow state ways. So it does many, many different things. It's really an ideal molecule for our time. It's doing everything that we need right now as a collective in humanity, really to engage, to relax, to process, to bond, to be big-hearted and empathetic. There's such a need for that molecule.
SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they've been legal for a long time, widely prescribed. How is an SSRI different than MDMA?
Basically, an SSRI prevents neurons from reabsorbing serotonin, but the idea is that it creates a numbing effect, like a disaffect state. And for some this is a saving grace for them because it really dulls these feelings of grief and depression and anxiety that is part of our cultural malaise.
It sounds like disassociating. So you're not diving into the trauma.
That's right.
And the trauma remains in the background radiation.
That's right.
I see the difference. So just staying with MDMA for a moment, because I really agree with you, it's a molecule of our time. How would you describe, for someone who doesn't know what it feels like, the felt sense of a person's experience when they take MDMA?
I think a lot of people talk about heart expansive, and I think that that's a really good way of describing it. There's deep empathy for self and others. And from that place, there's so much possible. But I also think about the overview effect, how astronauts describe looking down on Earth. There's this deep sense of awe and connection and gratitude. In my own exploration of MDMA, I often feel this embodied sense, like a somatic mantra of everything is okay. And that's just, it's such a lovely feeling.
So, in terms of mental health, what have been the effects that are lasting of MDMA that make it really interesting for therapeutic use?
What you're talking about is not only efficacy, but durability,
Yeah.
which was a huge part of the phase 2 trials. The studies show that after 3 sessions of MDMA, along with all the individual therapy that accompanies it, that approximately 75% of the participants no longer qualify under the diagnosis of PTSD. They followed up with these participants 2 months later, 6 months later, 12 months after this process, and they were finding that those participants continued to get better and were living happier lives. So MDMA has proven to be quite durable.
Recently, the FDA did decline the approval of MDMA for therapeutic treatment, and the company Lykos Therapeutics was the company that I think was driving it forward. And the retraction letter cites not that MDMA had failed in its mission to prove itself, but that there was a misconduct or ethical issue. Do you think there's hope or an expectation that there'll be, another turn at bat and we're going to drive this forward still?
So the misconduct had to do with one case of a research assistant beginning a relationship with one of the participants. And for a therapist, that's just egregious. It's a major ethical violation. And I don't really know of one field or profession in which this form of ethical violation has not happened. So it's a little suspect to me that one of the main reasons that this highly successful and needed intervention is essentially being shut down to the public. It speaks to the need for additional accountability in this work. And maybe that's the silver lining of this perceived barriers, because it's making us really look at what we can do to prevent the misconduct in the therapeutic setting. The work elicits so much vulnerability, and that vulnerability needs to be protected. But back to your initial question, many people in the field believe MDMA will get approved, but this may not happen for maybe another 2 years because the phase 3 trials have to now be reset from the beginning. And there's an argument being made for veterans and also for individuals that are coming to the end of their life due to illness and disease for what is being called a right to try, that they could legally be allowed to use MDMA. These populations would benefit from the treatment, and it would also bring more data and research to strengthen MDMA's legitimacy. This, however, is just an idea right now, and there's no real policy around it.
I have heard, although I haven't read any white papers, on MDMA having an effect on expectation of end of life into death.
A lot of the research is actually being conducted around palliative care. The universities are doing it around veterans, but palliative care is the other big population that MDMA is being worked with.
Is there anything, just a regular folk, not a therapist, not someone in MAPS, which I just want to mention is Multidisciplinary Association for
Psychedelic.
Psychedelic
Yes. Yep. You
Studies?
got it.
Okay. If they're not, a member MAPS or they're not a therapist, is there something just the person on the ground who cares about this can actually do to push it forward?
For people who are using it, whether it's for therapeutic or recreational use, to be really using it responsibly right now, because there's eyes on it. And whenever there's a worst case scenario, it gets amplified. So for us to just be very careful and responsible in our use. Obviously, phase 3 is a whole nother cost of expenses for MAPS. And so if people feel drawn to contribute to that, it's just like these moments where people are talking and trying to create less of a stigma around psychedelics. I think that's helpful as well.
Right. I took the MAPS Zendo training, which is the group that they send to festivals, and we're trained to handle people who are having a struggle in a psychedelic experience and just make it as positive as it can be to keep hospitalizations down, to help the numbers, because the data matters. One of the things we can do on the ground for people who are using MDMA is just test it, because the hospitalization might be because of something else that's in it, but it'll go down on the record as MDMA. DanceSafe will ship free tests. So returning to joy, in practical terms, if there's a joy equation coming from a therapeutic lens, are there practices that are just available to everybody that can help us bring joy forward?
Connection is the through line to joy. One of the ways in which we think about connection is with other human beings. And yes, connection in meaningful, deep ways with another person or with even a group or the collective at a concert, it can elicit joy. I'm an introvert at heart, and the idea of connecting with others doesn't always give me the warm fuzzies, not always. So I think about these other ways. And for one, there's nature. And this is not just about objectifying nature, like going into it and, oh, it's beautiful, but just really truly connecting in nature and centering our breath. And then finding the confluence of my breath with the breeze, or sitting at a body of water and reflecting on my body of water with this water around me, and connecting with the earth and feeling its support in my body. And then I extend that all the way out in the ways that the earth generously actually provides humanity with everything we could possibly need. And I go into these deep spaces of gratitude. And I may connect with the sun and the light and the warmth and just parallel with my own heart. This true communing with nature, really becoming one with it. This can elicit joy creatively. There's a creative field when we're engaging creatively, and we develop kind of a relationship to a medium, whether it's like a painter with the paintbrush and the paints, or with a sculpture with their clay or stone, or a dancer, or even an athlete with their body. This connection can elicit joy. Also spiritually, feeling and being in conversation with more transcendent aspects of this world, whether it's ancestors or the higher self or God, creator, source, however you want to define that, this can elicit profound joy. And then just with self, William Blake had it right that I am multitudes. I have an artist and a cynic and a wise woman and a wounded child all within me. And when they're all listening to each other in this kind of democracy of the psyche, really, it creates a harmony with myself, and I can experience joy in that. So there's many, many different ways of connecting and finding joy.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you would like to talk about?
I just think about the statistics that I know. There are 1 billion people worldwide suffering from some mental health condition, 50 million Americans, 13 million Americans with PTSD. We've got like 20 veterans suicides a day. we're really talking about a global epidemic, and whether it is through MDMA or being able to really access joy, it really provides a balance because we're suffering. I think a lot of people are suffering, and for good reason. And joy, in some ways, is a resistance to and a balance to that suffering. It's important that we seek that out.
Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Wendy. It's been a pleasure.
One can integrate oneness and vibrate unity. It will sweep Mars, it'll sweep Kepler, it'll sweep the Alpha Centauri, it'll sweep the whole universe. I can almost call it the sound of the cosmic nervous system, that when I listen to it, it brings my nervous system into sync with it and shoots through me whatever it is I need to know or to feel or to do at this particular time to be in harmony with the universe. The more I am in touch with this ocean of oneness, I feel the more buoyant and the more available I am for the expression of joy, that I can bend and sway and dance with the current of life and still keep a sense that this too shall pass. And no matter what gets destroyed or taken from me, the self that I am in the midst of this is still here. Now, the object is to get to a place in your natural, spontaneous laughter where you really access all these places in your body with your laughter, so that the laughter is no longer just shallow on the surface and going out. You're actually radiating a body laughter. And this must go a long way to cut frustration, density, and resistance in the body by being fluid, open, buoyant, the less available to experience friction and the other things that cut into the joy. Whatever you're going to do with life, it's got to equal you having access to your laughter, your smile, freedom of movement, and free-flowing breath. You can list those as some of the things that are known if you're saying, what is my purpose in life? Well, whatever your purpose is in life, when you realize it, it must allow you to breathe freely. It must allow you to laugh freely. It must allow you to smile freely.
Hey, Wendy.
Hey,
That was fun.
that was a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, Rob, I want to remind everyone who's listening that, as promised, this show contains a wedding invite. You're all invited. We'll be there. So just wait for it, and we'll share those details in a couple of minutes. But first, Rob, why don't you tell us about the World Happiness Report?
Anyone can access it and read it. It's chock full of all kinds of data points. What I really felt from it is confident that our country, the United States, can rank higher if we take a few tips from the countries that are at the top of this list.
There was another study, not by the same organization, some years back that was pretty interesting because it pointed out that after a certain amount of income, and I think at the time it was like $70,000 a year, happiness did not increase with additional wealth. I thought that was really cool.
I found the wealth part of it very fascinating as well. The countries that were the most joyful didn't necessarily have the most per capita wealth.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did have, which I found really interesting, and those top countries are like Finland and Denmark. All the Nordic countries were in the top 10. But they did have a different type of distribution of wealth, less of a wealth gap. And they also had more robust social safety nets that prevent their citizens from certain worries, like how am I going to pay for childcare, or how am I going to afford decent health insurance? And many of these nations also had hybrid economic systems, blending capitalism with socialism. And yes, oh no, I said the S word. But but in truth, we have that here in the U.S. They just have more robust versions of these safety nets.
Yeah, like if you've been to the post office or the library, you're a socialist because that's what they are.
It's true. It's true. And they also, a lot of them had a more direct version of democracy, which often included multi-party systems and parliamentary systems.
So I want to take a minute and share an experience that I had with MDMA. You may recall in the interview, she gave us a really excellent breakdown of what this molecule does in the brain. My experience really kind of exemplifies it. Knowing that trauma is defined as ever present, meaning our brains somehow did not move traumatic events to long-term memory. So I intentionally took MDMA as a therapeutic tool. I created a little container for myself, which was something I made up in my imagination to move memories to long term. I also focused while I was doing this on different parts of the brain at different times. So reduction of my amygdala, which is like fear and fight flight, expansion of my hippocampus. So I closed my eyes. I queued up 3 songs that I picked for the occasion, and I reviewed my trauma timeline from birth to now.
Wow.
So I used the Super Mario Brothers, the little like Italian looking cartoon men. I had them start at birth, and with brooms and spray bottles and ladders and mops, they went through each traumatic event in my life, and they like gathered up all the muck and they put it in a big glob. And at the end, I had this mass piled up, and I was like, okay, I got to move it now to long-term memory because MDMA has activated those receptors that manage how we deal with memory and time. And so the Super Mario Brothers took their brooms and stuff and pushed all the dark matter into a black hole. And as they did, I told myself, I'm moving this to long-term memory. I'm moving this to long-term memory. So in the end, we went back with squeegees, the Mario Brothers, and we squeegeed the timeline till it was shiny like a newly washed windshield. It was heavy, really heavy. And since I did it, I have lasting effects. My memory improved. So when I lean into my memory, it's usually like a dark place, and it shifted. Now it's a very bright window-filled attic with cardboard boxes. And I just have to say, like, I'm looking for this, and the box becomes very evident to me. It's quick, and there's light. I also catch myself realizing when I'm doing something like a skill that I crafted as a way to survive those traumas, because these skills become also our greatest tools once we disconnect the trauma. So when I catch myself using those skills, there's this little voice there that says like, oh, don't take the past with you.
That's lovely.
I feel lighter. I feel better.
Great. As Urena pointed out, that's why this works so well with military PTSD, because they're able to do that very same thing. So I think you just showed it to us in real life.
Yeah, I did it.
I want to share my experience as well. I think anyone, if they think way back, can remember that state of wonder, that awe, that endless imagination they had as a child. What the MDMA molecule does for me is it puts me right back there. I don't have to try to remember way back. Now I have a new experience to draw from that's close in my memory. This life that we live is a miracle. This planet we live on is a miracle, but it's really easy to forget that when you're in the trenches of adulting. And this molecule just reminds me how amazing everything is.
Yeah.
And like you said, it lasts. It's not like you have to return to the molecule to get that feeling. You can return to the memory of it. And that's what Urena called durability.
Yeah, and also recidivism. So with the vet study, they didn't return to PTSD over time. It was lasting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that she called it the molecule of our time.
Indeed.
Let's jump over to Laraji for a moment, because his contribution to this show was showing us how to achieve joy in our daily lives, like super practical.
Yeah.
I appreciated his reminder that joy relates to inviting in and learning how to trust and be guided by our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like simple in a way, but it's not trite.
Not at all.
Yeah. I remember there was a standout thing he said that you really liked. Do you remember it?
If you build a language for joy, joy will come.
Isn't that just the truth with everything? Like,
Yeah.
I think about we have so many predispositions to thinking the world is as bad as it was yesterday or whatever. And we never have a stake in the ground that each new day we expect maybe it's better.
Yeah. We have the negativity bias instead most of the time. He had a whole bunch of euphemisms that were really clever and memorable. Do you recall any of those?
My favorite was the bubbly gigglies.
Oh, yes.
He said, open the laughter envelope, which I loved. Like, be the one in the movie theater who starts the laughter.
Yeah. He also warned not to squash someone else's laughter opportunity.
Right. That's like the etiquette of laughter. He had a few others, like working with a cosmic radar system.
Play is the spontaneous exploration of sensation. That's a good one.
Amazing. Yeah.
Another one he said was getting the inner child to come forward stage front.
That's like your experience on MDMA.
I was just talking about the childlike joy, but what Laraji offers is another path to this experience. He talks about getting out of your adult boundaries and getting closer access to your joy and laughter. I want that 111 laughs he was talking about. I don't want the 11. I want the 111.
Oh, that was children, right?
Yeah, that's why it's important to get out of our adult boundaries. The other part that really hit me is when he was asked why he's so peaceful. And he said it's a minimum of agitation, avoiding what he calls non-essential directions in life and finding yourself, as many can relate to, in responsibilities or obligations that you wouldn't choose, but rather to craft a life that ensures you have access to laughter, your smile, freedom of movement, and free-flowing breath. Now, I think that's good advice.
That is excellent advice. I'm going to listen to Laraji.
Me too.
I'm going to listen to everyone, all our guests.
Start counting my laughs.
I'm laughing more since we recorded this show.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. Yeah, it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of joy and laughter, we have a wedding invite for you guys, as promised.
Yes.
So our friends, Zach and Emily, who are the musical group Future Joy, are getting married. And you're invited to meet us there and attend their wedding. It's taking place in St. Petersburg, Florida on Saturday, February 1st at 5 p.m. And we really hope you can make it because we're going.
You experienced the joy these people bring when you heard the interview. Just combine that with their music in a live setting and their wedding day. That's going to be quite a day.
If you're going to the wedding, here's how to RSVP. And we'll put this in the show notes, but I'll read it once. So it's ezregister.com/events/40648.
Excellent.
So on wrapping up this show, part of my joy equation is remembering to reflect and in particular, feel gratitude.
Yes.
I heard a wise mystic say, only that which you have burned into the anima mundi, which is the soul of the world in Latin, through your heart, only that lasts forever.
I love that.
So Rob,
Yes.
what are you grateful for?
You know, I have lots to be grateful for, but I think what I would bring forward right now is I'm grateful for the opportunity to make this podcast with you. Truly. I have had many collaborations in my life, mostly through music, and I can't say that I've had one that is so synergistic.
Mm.
And you know also that I'm very keen on social justice and equality, and this gives me a voice. It allows me to participate in the conversation and weigh in on topics that interest me, that interest us. It's an honor. I get a lot of joy out of it.
I do too. It's really the joy bomb in my life right now. And same, collaborations are great, but they're always a little tricky. And this collaboration is just smooth and fun. And so, yeah, I am also grateful for this, Rob.
Excellent.
And, I guess, of late, I'm also really grateful for all the good friends I have and all the teachers and guides and mentors that throughout my life always seem to show up just when they're most needed.
Yeah. Well, Wendy, that was a fun and joyful show. I think, we got a little bit sentimental and heavier here at the end, but I'll just have to, maybe do something.
That works for me.
Okay.
Okay, friends. Thanks for listening. We hope to see some of you at the wedding. Stay tuned for our next show. And of course, stay joyful.
Yes. Bye, friends. We are always delighted to receive feedback from our listeners. Email knowingpodcast@gmail.com and stay connected on Substack. Knowing is written, produced, and hosted by Wendy Tremaine and myself, Rob Stroop. Original music and sound design also by Rob Stroop. Recorded and produced at Taproot Studio, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Knowing is a production of Chapter 24 Media. Thanks for listening.
Oh,